Welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of Griot of the Diaspora, and I'm your host, Nakaira G. And today we have to talk about OkuntaKinte. We do. There's been way too many videos that have come out. Way too many people have started talking about it from all over the world, and it's time to get into it. Let's talk about it. Okay, so for those of you who may not know what I'm talking about or who OkuntaKinte is, let me give you a brief rundown as fast as I possibly can. So, this guy by the name of Joseph Darko, who is a British Ghanaian guy who moved to Ghana when he was about 5, but he's originally born in London. And pretty much throughout his career, he has been basically like a foundational Nepo baby. He has been able to do kind of really world renowned things that only a selected few people in the world get to do. And so he is somebody that I would probably describe prior to this situation that we're getting ready to get into. He's somebody that I would probably describe as an artist, as a curator, as a creative. I would even describe him possibly as a writer, but just an all around creative. He's created a variety of things, art projects. He was a poet at one point. It seems like he has worn many hats. And as a multifaceted artist myself, I understand that world very well. Well, today we are talking about Joseph's most recent art project, which is called the Last Supper Project. And so this is going to be a tough video because I think that there is going to be a lot of trigger warnings and there is going to be a lot of sensitive information as well as sensitive topics that we are getting ready to talk about. And so before I even get deep into this, I definitely want to give a trigger warning that we will be talking about not just mental health, but we will be talking about assisted unaliving. We will be talking about mental illnesses, the varieties of them, as well as the speculations that come with them. And we're going to be talking about the allegations that are now put onto Joseph Darko with his most recent Last Supper project, which was supposed to symbolize his journey to euthanasia. And for those of you who may not know what euthanasia is, it is assisted unaliving of yourself. I have to use these terms because I'm on YouTube. It's very, very frustrating, but I have to use these terms so that my video do not get flagged. So let's just keep up. So anyways, I would say, so let me give you my introduction to Joseph before we even really get into the euthanasia and everything. So I believe last year or 2023, I did a video talking about Joseph Darko's allegations against Kehinde Wiley. Kehinde Wiley is a Nigerian American painter and artist who is most known for his portrait of Barack Obama. And there was a sexual allegation put against him by Joseph Darko. And I did a video about that, about the allegations, about not just the allegations, but just about the concept of, again, homosexuality in Africa, the consequences of it, and how would the public, as well as the government, as well as law, even deal with a sexual allegation between two men when the country of Ghana is anti-homosexuality. So I was always very curious in this particular allegation that Joseph put out against Kehinde Wiley, who Kehinde Wiley strongly disagreed and strongly denied those claims. He even went further to say that him and Joseph had past consensual interactions. So he's very surprised that Joseph would now say that there was something inappropriate that happened. Although allegedly there were other people outside of Joseph who did come out and accuse Kehinde Wiley of sexual allegations. Again, a lot of this information is still alleged because nothing has been confirmed. And from my perspective, I only heard of these other people coming out against Kehinde Wiley being in association with Joseph. So there's also that speculation of, was there other people, were there other people, and things like that. So, however, because of my time in Ghana, I was introduced to Joseph Darko through his work at the No Door Residency. And so the No Door Residency in Accra is located in Labadi, basically Osu and Labadi. It's really at the cusp of them. And it is a artist residency house. I've met several artists who had a residency at No Door, who had exhibitions. I've been to exhibition events. I've been to fashion events at the No Door residency building, specifically for brands like Aja Bang and different local Ghanaian brands and African brands, especially during their fashion week, festivities and stuff like that. So I've been to No Door. I've never met Joseph, but I've been at events and things like that. When I did the video on the sexual allegations, that's when I started to learn a little bit more. That's when I learned a lot more about the artists from the No Door residency who claimed that they had never been paid for work that had been sold, or they were not paid for competitions that they won and things like that. And so that all came at the same time. This is all happening while Joseph has already announced that he was planning on going through a euthanasia process in the Netherlands. And so again, the conversation right now is going to focus on who Joseph is, but then we're about to get into what the problematic thing is and why so many people started making these videos and why I'm now choosing to make this video. So that's just a little background about Joseph. He's an artist. He is somebody who you can see in the different videos that I'm posting and pictures I'm posting. He has been recognized and awarded from organizations all over the world. So when he announced his euthanasia journey, particularly in the Netherlands, it came as a viral moment on social media. A lot of people found interest in this. A lot of people showed support. But obviously, coming from a West African background, there was a demographic of his audience that felt like this was irresponsible, especially from a cultural and a religious standpoint. However, I noticed that Joseph got a lot of support, particularly outside of Ghana, and particularly from the US and people in Europe, which I found very interesting, not surprising. Obviously, there is this concept that people in the West are more progressive in their views, which is kind of, that could be debated, right? However, when Joseph came out about his euthanasia journey, I was particularly engaged with his content more from that, because it was something that I felt like, oh, this is really interesting, especially happening in Ghana, in a place that I know that mental health is not taken seriously as we would like for it to be. In a lot of spaces in Ghana, mental health is still considered a curse. It's still considered a, unfortunate thing from God. And it can get really religious and really non-medical real quick. And I thought that Joseph was going to take his experience and turn this into a movement that pushes Ghana forward when it comes to not just talking about mental health, but also possibly about the acceptance of homosexuality. It wasn't until, months and now a year into Joseph's social media journey where I realized that maybe this is a very personal experience. And maybe this is not necessarily something that he's doing for the betterment of Ghana, because this could have been the moment. And respectfully, Joseph could have been the pioneer that Ghana needs to talk about mental health in a serious platform. What I disagree with when it comes to this whole situation with Joseph is that he's not necessarily talking about mental health. He's not necessarily talking about the options to help with mental health. He's not really talking about the traditional herbs or practices or non-religious aspects of mental health. He's not really he's not showcasing practitioners and therapists who are in this space who could actually help millions of people in his 500,000 plus followers. Instead, this is a very selfish journey that he is publicly showcasing from a cultural perspective that does not really serve the people that he comes from, which respectfully, even though he comes from a wealthy family in Ghana. However, the average Ghanaian does not have that experience, and the average Ghanaian knows what living in Ghana is like. They know what it's like to be in Ghana and having a mental health issue that gets untreated or gets you ostracized from your family, or you get made fun of in school, or you just are completely ignored in everyday society. It's very similar, almost identical to how we see it here in America. But that's not what he's doing. He's actually suggesting, promoting, highlighting, and big upping euthanasia. And I don't know how much I trust the concept of that. I don't know how much I trust pushing euthanasia onto an audience that is not just mentally vulnerable, but also an audience that for some people can't even fathom the concept of paying $10,000 to $15,000 to be unalived legally. And I really want people to pay attention to this source that I pulled directly from the government of the Netherlands. The difference between termination of life on request and assisted unaliving. I think that the terms and the language used, especially when talking about this, is really important. And I want to point out that Joseph has expressed, multiple times that he has sought for this solution due to the physical and mental pain that he feels from having bipolar disorder. However, I believe that there are still different categories for people who are terminally ill versus people who are mentally ill and are finding legal and safer or healthier ways to leave Earth early. I feel like using the term unaliving themselves is so just personally uncomfortable. It's kind of frustrating because it's also just not, even for censorship reasons, it does not really illustrate really what the experience is for the person or for others. So throughout this video, I'm going to try to find different ways to describe that. But yes, I think that those are different categories for people who are terminally ill versus people like Joseph who have mental illnesses. And I kind of want to dig deeper into that really quick, because it really does come off as if this is a marketing scheme for the government of the Netherlands, almost in a way. And because of the way that he has traveled all the way to the Netherlands, he has become an immigrant there. He has somehow found housing and all of those types of things there. And so everyone that knows his journey is also associating his journey particularly with the government of Netherlands, right? Even though there have been particular organizations that Joseph has worked with that have actually denounced him and what he's doing by making this a publicity stunt. And I think that, again, that is more of what the focus of this video is for. Euthanasia is also something that people use, like I said earlier, when they are terminally ill, right? And for people who may not want to just sit in hospice, or people who may have, something have happened, or a long-term disease or things like that. You can do your own research to your own discretion through this website and others, but there are different categories from my research that will get you approved or denied or prolonging the time or however that looks. So I do want to point out that, with the Joseph situation in particular, he started off as somebody who wanted to leave early. So he's using this particularly to leave early, or at least was, because for those of you who don't know, Joseph did announce that he decided not to go along with the euthanasia procedure. It also frightens me that it also gives off the idea that mentally ill people don't deserve to live. It gives off the impression that mentally ill people should work to make money to pay somebody to help them unalive themselves as well. And all of those things are very uncomfortable. And all of those things are very sensitive and vulnerable topics that I still want to be very careful of. However, I also want to interrogate what exactly is he doing, because I think that we've seen the think pieces. If you have not seen a think piece on Joseph before this video, I highly recommend you do that, because I'm not going to go into all of the sensationalism of Joseph. I'm not interested in the is he a fraud, is he a scammer concept. I'm more so interested in what he is doing and how it leaves a bad representation for people in Ghana who are actually doing the work towards strengthening and building a mental health industry or culture even. And I really don't want this video to be like an attack on Joseph, because I still understand that he is somebody who is mentally ill. However, I still strongly believe that all of us have a duty to each other. And regardless of mental illness state, you still have, if you still have the ability to get on the phone, turn on a camera, make money, you still have accountability to stand by, regardless of your stage in your mental illness. And I think that as much as I have to give grace to Joseph and other people who may be in support of Joseph, or other people who may be doing the same thing that Joseph is doing, as much as I am going to always give grace to that, because at the end of the day, we don't know where these people are going to end up. We don't know if Joseph is going to turn around next year or tomorrow and say, this is wrong, right? I'm still going to always leave a door open and leave grace for that. However, right now in 2025, with given what is going on in America, with given what is going on in Ghana, I'm really disappointed that he is this irresponsible with his platform. I'm disappointed that, like I said, this could have been a moment to actually advocate for mental health. Instead, he's advocating for euthanasia. And I don't think that that's safe, especially knowing that so many people on social media do not have the intellectual wherewithal to even have this deep of a conversation from a not just a mental health perspective, but a political one, a social one, a cultural one, a religious one. I just think that it's irresponsible. And it's irresponsible because we're talking about Ghana, and we're talking about Africa, and we're talking about the resources that we don't have. And so I really just, I also want to implore you guys to read through the article that Joe from Labari Journal wrote about this particular subject, particularly about Joseph Darko and the story and the legacy that he has built over the past, really, honestly, it sounds about 20 years. Read through that article to get a little bit more of the insight, the details, the small little details that you may want to, learn more about. But also, I want people to take away from this video how important the work that you do in Africa is in comparison to the work that you do in the West. I think that the reason why so many people outside of Africa are so interested in Joseph's story is because of the sensationalism of even just the concept of a educated African is enough for some people, right? The concept of a polarizing, educated African is already enough. That's what pulled most of us in. But I think what's happening now is that we're watching somebody now sensationalize their own unaliving, all for attention. And we're watching them use that attention for absolutely nothing. So I'm going to leave that here because I don't want this video to be that long. But definitely let me know how you feel in the comments. Let me know how you feel about other videos or other information that you may have seen about Joseph. Let me know how you feel because I really want to keep this conversation going. I did this video in particular because I did the video where Joseph made the sexual allegations against Kehinde Wiley, and I felt like this was the proper follow-up to that video because I definitely want to keep up with as many stories as I possibly can that I do talk about. And since I did that video, I thought it was only right to flip the coin and now talk about this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know how you feel in the comments. Until next time.